Today we're gonna make this figure, but it has a special feature. It's not 10 centimeters, 14 or 20 centimeters tall. It's 100 centimeters, 1 meter. Just the size alone, how big this figure is, already makes it much more interesting. Hi, I'm Laura Nicolas, and I've been making nativity figures with a 3D printer for a while, but this is the first one I've made at this scale. The figure is by a designer called Reconquer Designs, and it's part of a set called Pigpen. I'll leave all the links in the description. By the way, I'm sure you know, but just to put it in context, here in Catalonia and in many places in the world actually, we have a really strong tradition to make nativity scenes as Christmas decorations. Families build their own at home and local groups make big ones to show in exhibitions during the holidays. The first step is to prepare the figure in the computer and cut it into pieces that fit on the printer bed. When there are only a few cuts, I usually do it directly in the slicer, but for more complex cuts like this one, I use Blender. For now, I make straight cuts and I don't complicate things. If you would like a video tutorial explaining how to make these cuts, leave a comment and I'll prepare one. Once I have it cut, it's time to print. Counting all the parts, it took about 146 hours of continuous printing. That's around 6 days. Although with pauses and a few reprints I had to do, it actually took me a few days longer. I printed it in PLA because that's what I had on hand and I was eager to start the project. But I am aware that with this material, the figure cannot be left outdoors and it isn't particularly strong. Later, I bought ASA and made another model, also 1 meter tall, but with a more suitable material. I'll upload that video soon. Once printed, it's time to review the parts and see what needs fixing. There is always something to fix. The feet, for example, have this horizontal surface where the print lines are very visible, so I'll need to apply filler and then sand it down. The legs turn out really well. They also have these print lines which won't be visible once the figure is standing, but I'll sand it down a little bit anyway. The same goes for the rest of the pieces. Filler and sanding wherever the lines are most visible, and that's basically it. Honestly, this project has been surprisingly smooth. I didn't have many printing issues, so this time I won't need any major repairs. I start by gluing the pieces together because what will take the most work is hiding the joints. My usual strategy is to use a soldering iron or a wood burner because the heat melts the plastic so the two parts fuse together. It leaves the seams a bit rough, but later you can apply filler and sand them smooth so they disappear completely. This part of the model has a lot of texture, so it's much more difficult to weld. In total, I spent around 4 hours welding all the pieces. For me, it's too long. Next time, I'll probably use glue instead. For smaller figures, welding works really well because I can sculpt or adjust details as I go, but with figures this big, it just takes too many hours of work. The next step is to apply filler on the seams and on any surface that's too rough and needs smoothing. I use a water-based filler, a regular one, the kind you use to patch holes in walls. Again, not the ideal material, but it's what I had. I apply the filler with a brush to cover holes while keeping the texture, so I don't have to sand too much later. I actually enjoy this step, so I take my time and I do it carefully. Once dry, it's time to sand everything down to make the seams as invisible as possible and the surfaces as smooth as I can. I spent quite a while on this, but printing with 3D filament always leaves visible lines, and my goal is not to hide them all. I just want the most obvious and most distracting ones to disappear. I know that up close you can still see them, but hiding every single line would mean too much work, too much cost, and honestly, it's not worth it. Finally, I applied a layer of waterproofing wool liquid over the filler, something that I was given to test. I want to see if it helps prevent the filler from absorbing moisture and cracking over time. Once the figure is finished and a few weeks have passed, I'll see if it worked and I'll let you know. And now for my favorite part, painting. I start with a black base coat to even out the surface. It helps define shadows early on, control the lighting better, and give more depth and realism to the colors. Ideally, I should have used a primer first, which helps the paint stick better, but I didn't have any, so I skipped that step. Then I apply a fairly heavy dry brush of white to cover about 80-90% of all the raised areas, leaving the deeper areas dark. This step is important because it lets me see the shapes and the volumes better before starting with the actual colors. If I painted directly on black, everything would look too dark and it would be harder to achieve bright tones and balance the lights and shadows. And finally, it's time to start painting with the right colors. I begin with the skin tone, which I mix myself from the base colors. I didn't record the mixing process, but here's what I did. I use a kitchen scale to measure exactly how many grams of each color I was adding, so I can write it down, and if I ran out of color and I need to mix more, I could basically reproduce the same tone. For the color of the tunic, I wanted the greenish green, and of course, I kept to my strategy of mixing my own colors so I'm not limited by the available ones. Since I had no idea of how to make this color, I asked ChatGPT, "Thank you, you are awesome." I have to say that this model has a lot of tiny gaps and hard to reach spots, so it took me quite a while to finish painting the tunic. But I'm really happy with how the color turned out. Next, I painted the brown of the belt and the back hanging from his shoulder. Again, I asked ChatGPT how to achieve that color, and in the end, I painted the shoes with the same brown too because I didn't feel like mixing another shade of brown. And I figured that with the final step, with the washes at the end, I would be able to make each part look slightly different anyway. For the pants, I basically darkened the tunic color. By this point, I was a bit of a rush because the next day I had to show the figure to a potential client for a potential commission, so I didn't measure the colors as carefully. And same for this part. I just mixed white and black for a gray tone, but I didn't weight it. Before continuing, let me tell you about Lawal. Since that potential client and that potential commission came through Lawal, we are a group of people passionate about building nativity scenes, and we've been making them for many years. We have started a service offering nativity figures, and we work with various artists, and we are also creating our own exclusive collection of original and super interesting figures. So if you have a 3D printer, you can buy the models and print them yourself, or, if you prefer, we can print it and ship it to you, paint it or unpaint it. The great thing about 3D printing is that figures can be made in any size. We offer the most common scales for nativity scenes, that's between 10 and 20 centimeters, but they can be printed much larger, as in this case, or much smaller. Visit lawal.art, check out the catalog, or request a custom figure, because we do also create custom figures for you. By the way, we did get the commission. So not exactly for this figure, but for two others, also 1 meter tall. So subscribe to the channel and you'll see that in an upcoming video. Back to this figure, I painted the hair black directly. You can tell that I was in a hurry. And also I painted the back's buckle with a metallic color. Before the washes, I did some touch-ups, a final pass over the base colors to cover any missed spots and to clean up the lines where two colors meet, leaving everything neat and defined. And now, the washes. This means applying a very diluted paint with water to add depth and tone so it doesn't look like a single flat color. I only have footage of when I applied the black blush to the gray, but I also did washes over the brown leather, on the belt and on the back, and a few other areas too. I didn't have time to do as many washes as I would like or as the figure really needed, but I was on a time hurry because I had to show it to the potential customer and had no more time. So here are some images of the final result. Well, final up to this point, since I still need to go back over it, finish the washes, and probably do a final light dry brush pass to bring out the highlights and the edges. But this is what I have up until this point. And you, what size are your figures? Let me know in the comments and don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this one. Also, let me tell you that I am part of a group in Parets del Vallès in Barcelona, and you can come visit us in December and January. That's when our exhibition is open. I'll leave a link in the description. If you come, you'll be able to see this very same figure, not in the scene itself because we use much smaller figures, but in the exhibition hall. And if you're planning to visit, let me know in the comments because I'd love to meet you in person. Give the video a thumbs up and see you soon.